Hello everyone, this is John from Final Cut Pro Classes, and today's tutorial is going to be about how to use the title tool. So here I have a generic timeline that I made, just some shots I did in New York City at Times Square, and I want to put some titles on it. So we're going to be working right here in this title tool. That's a bad circle. Okay, so I'm going to click that on, and I have all my titles here. So we'll go to just any title. We'll go to this basic 3D title. And I can drag it on like this, like a lot of people do, drag it on. But if you use these shortcuts here that you have for the editing are the same for the titles. So there's a couple things you can't do by dragging it on. One is insert. So if I delete that and I want to insert into this clip, I can't do that because it wants to replace it if I try to drag it in. But if I click that title and I hit the insert button here, and the shortcut is W. So if I hit that, it'll push everything over and put that title and insert it between your clips. I'm going to undo that, Command Z. Okay, and the same thing with the connection clip and the put at the end. So if I say I click this title and I want it to be on top here, then I could hit the connected clip button and the title goes on top, right there. Let me delete that. I'm just going to highlight and hit delete. And also if I want to overwrite, which I can't do when I drag in, I can click the title. And if I wanted to overwrite, a piece of video right here, I can hit the overwrite button and you can see that the shortcut is D. So I click that and it just erases what was there and it overwrites. So there's the same commands as the edit buttons. They're good to get used to. Also, to pick an in and out for a title, if I move my playhead here and I pick an in and I want my title to go all the way over here and I pick an out, then if I hit the connected clip button, the title goes exactly where I wanted it in the timeline and I don't have to drag it in and out. So I pick the exact frame. So let's say I want a title from here. I mark my in to here. I mark my out and I'm going to get this title here just randomly. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it on top. So I click the connected clip button, hit Q. You can drag it on or, pull it out, however you want. I like the buttons better. So here I have this title here. And I want to start looking at what I can do with it. So I'm going to highlight it. And when you highlight anything in the timeline, it activates the inspector here. Okay. And anything that's highlight in the timeline, we'll get this as inspector, and all these controls have to do with this right here, and that's it. So basically, if I go to the first menu here, I can see that I have a control here that says background. So if I click that, the background disappears on the title. Okay. If I go to the next, and everything has different controls, so you might see a bunch of other controls under this, and you just have to go into them and see what they do. So if I go to this next control here, I can change the text here. I could also change it here if I click it like that and highlight it. But I like doing it in here because it doesn't move things around. So I could just say Times Square. And that changes the Times Square. Now this title has a movement to it. Okay, and when you stretch out a title and you adjust, the movement will adjust with it. So it'll always start at where it's supposed to start and it'll always end where it's supposed to end. Okay. So here, if I'm in this menu right here, I have all kinds of different controls here and I can mess around with them and just slide things around. I can change the alignment. I can change the vertical alignment. It just goes on and on and on as to what you can do. And you just have to click around to see what the sliders are doing. Okay. So, basically you just go down all these menus, and just, mess around. You have all kinds of controls. Here's a check mark for 3D text. So I take that on and off and the 3D disappears. I put that back on and now I have the 3D again. And there's all kinds of sliders here that I can mess with. The weight of it, so I can make it a little thicker, the depth of it. So really cool stuff. The lighting, and a lot of controls are closed, but if you hit the show button, it'll show you the controls more controls that you have for that title. So here I can change the intensity, and you can see that changing a little bit. Self shadows, environment, it just goes on and on and on. I can put a glow on it. I can put a drop shadow. So, just to go through these menus. And again, if I go on to this basic clip here, this menu, this is, your video always has this menu here, and it's about the rotation. So here you can rotate the title. And if the background wasn't on, it would just rotate the title. And here you have, a lot of controls have these, what we call keyframes. Okay, and when you see a keyframe anywhere next to a control, that means you can change that control as the video plays. I'm going to get into more keyframing a little later in the next tutorial, but just a real basic way to understand them is that if you say move your playhead here and you want your title to have been rotated, and that's real soft, to here, okay? I want it to start there. And I hit this keyframe, okay? It remembers that I want it to start there. All I have to do is move the playhead to somewhere else and say, okay, by the time it gets to this point in time, I want that to rotate this way, or maybe a couple times, and I want it to stop, there. I can't even get it straight, but I don't want to figure out the number. So if I drag my playhead through the timeline, you can see that's exactly what that's going to do with those keyframes. And like I said, I'll get more into keyframes in another tutorial because they're really super important to control everything, including video. So again, if I have my playhead here and I start going into these controls here, I'm not actually controlling this title because this is highlighted in the timeline. So I still have the controls for this, and I'm not seeing here what I'm doing. So like if I take the background out, you won't see anything. If I go to this menu here and change something, or maybe even this menu here, and I change the scale, you don't see anything because you're actually working in this title because that's the one that's highlighted. But if I go back here, I messed this all up. So a lot of people forget to highlight the clip so that you can get the right inspector. So now you can see the inspector changed as soon as I highlight this one here. So again, lots of titles in here. So say we get like a little bumper, like let's say this one. So I want to put this one from here. I'll make an in point to here. I'll make an out point, and I'll hit my connected clip button, and it goes right between the two marks that I set, so I don't have to drag it in and out. I can drag it in and out if I want. And you can see it has a little movement. If I play that title, you see that slips up, and that little bar slips up, and then it stays there. Okay, so if no matter how I stretch that out, if I stretch it out on either side, okay, it's still gonna come up the way it should. Okay, because it adjusts itself. Any movement is gonna adjust itself. But of course, you can change the movement. You can pretty much change everything. If I highlight this title, I see maybe I want it up here or here, or, so I can move it up or down. If I go to the text menu, there's a scale there, so I can make the bar bigger and smaller. And again, I have a keyframe here. So again, we'll get into keyframes later, but let's say I want the bar to be small here. I'll put my playhead where I want it to start small. So I made it small, and I hit the keyframe. Okay, so it remembers where that control is at that point in time. So all you have to do is move the playhead and change that control. You don't have to hit this again because it knows you're changing it from the first time, then you just slide it up. So between my first point and my second point, that's what's going to happen with that bar. So you can see it does exactly that. And like I said, I'll get it more into keyframing in another tutorial because it's super important to know how to keyframe. Everything is basically keyframeable and really gives you a lot of control over your footage. So again, we'll go to the other menu here. If I drop this down, I have, all kinds of styles I can get this title to do. I can go chiseled style, or, I can, just basically pick what I want and Just go through them and you can check out what looks good for you. You can always adjust the font size. You can adjust, pretty much everything. You can take the 3D off, 3D on. So the best way is to really, take some time and go through some of these options here, because you can really figure out some really cool things to do. So here I want to make it red, maybe. The brightness. Okay. A glow. It doesn't look so great. Drop shadow. And here I can say show the panel. So a lot of the panels are hidden, but if you hit show, it will drop down the panels for you. And I hit glow. So here I have the drop shadow. And if I, change the distance, I can change the distance of that drop shadow. So basically, it's endless what you can do with these titles. You just have to make sure that you're working in the right place, so you get the right inspector here for the titles. And if you have any questions about the titles, it's always good to leave it in the comments. It's hard to go through everything because these titles have so many controls and they're all different. No matter what I drop in, it's going to have a different control to it. So here, every title does something different. Now, in a lot of titles, you're going to see a little arrow, a gray arrow, like pointing down. That's called the drop zone. So here we have this title, and it has two gray arrows pointing down. And basically what that means, if I put that here, that means I can put something in here, okay? So if I go to its controls here, I can see here is a drop zone. So if I click that and I go to some footage that I want to drop to it, so I go back to my footage here, and let's say I pick this clip here, okay? And then I say apply clip. You can see that clip goes into the title where the drop zone was. Not a very good clip to do. Okay, also I have two drop zones in here. So if I click this drop zone, again, it wants me to go to a clip. Let's say I go to this one randomly, and I say I want that to be my drop zone clip for here, and I say apply. So now I have these two clips in the two drop zones. So a lot of these titles that you have here will have these arrows in for drop zones, and it could be a logo drop zone. So if I want something else with a drop zone, I would get a logo drop zone. So here, if I type in logo in the search, I don't have to look through all the titles. I can go drop any of these in to my timeline, and I'm going to just drop that in there. I'll put my playhead on it, and of course I have to highlight it, so I want to make sure I have the right inspector. And again, you have this arrow here for a drop zone. I could change the title here, so I'll just put Times Square. And I have this drop zone here. So if I had a round logo, which I don't right now, and I'm just going to hit that, and it's asking me what do I want in that drop zone. So I'll go back to my footage here, and I'll say I'll put this in my, oh, that's boring. I'll put this in my drop zone on that frame. Okay, and I'll say apply clip, and now you have that clip in the drop zone there. So that can be really fun, to put some different stuff in the drop zones. So probably the most important thing is to go through all your titles and, play around with the controls to them and see what they do. And that will give you a better idea of which titles you want to use. Just remember when you're doing the work in the inspector to have the correct clip highlight and your playhead in it, so you can actually see the things you're doing here. And like I said before, with the keyframes, we'll be getting into that in the next tutorial, and those are super important. So I'm going to just do one more quick keyframe thing. I'm going to put the playhead here, and I'm going to hit this keyframe. Okay, turns yellow. I'm going to move the playhead to here. So by the time it gets to here, I want this to spin around a few times, and I want it to stop right there. And that's exactly what that's going to do. It's going to spin around as many times as I told it, and it's going to stop where I want it to stop. So that's the basics of the title tool. I can't really go through all the titles, all the controls, because there's just too many of them. But you can ask a question in the comments and I'll be happy to answer it. Thank you for watching. Like or subscribe, and I'll see you on the next tutorial.